Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this live stream meeting of the Mosgiel-Taieri Community Board. Lovely that you can all join us this evening. Special welcome to our board member, Mr. Brian Peake, who's still stranded over in Queensland. I hope you can hear and see us okay over there, Brian.
Yeah, okay.
Excellent. Let's crack on with our meeting then, shall we? There has been no request for a public forum this evening, so we will move on past that. There have been no apologies. So we move to item 3, confirmation of the agenda.
Madam Chair, there seems to be something missing on our agenda this week. On board updates, the celebration of excellence is not there, usually there.
I believe that's covered in the GSO report.
But we're only allowed to note the GSO report.
There will be an opportunity in there if there's any comments or discussion.
But no resolutions under, it's only been noted. It says on the agenda, it's only been noted.
Madam Chair, there is a recommendation to note. Obviously, members, if they wish to move an amendment or a motion, they do that, but it's still there. The opportunity is still there under that.
Thank you, Claire. So, given that, can we confirm the agenda without addition or alteration? Thank you, Martin. Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Declarations of interest. There's a note that there's been a little tidy up there. I think we had an email out about that. So everyone's had a chance to look at that. We'll just note if there are any additions or alterations now we might like to raise them.
Yeah, I believe they've got me down as the whole trust. I'm not on that. Coronation trust, and we don't get that.
Yes, I took that from the minutes when you were talking. Is that not the case? I can amend it if necessary.
Yeah, you've got to get on the Mosgiel Coronation Trust, that's Dean is on that.
So I think that might be my error. I saw I had you on. I meant to take you off. That's my apologies.
Any other corrections?
Yeah, just a couple on my area there. It says that I'm on the Tunnels Trust as a board representative. I advised the board some time ago that that was not to be the case. And the other thing which is not on there is that I'm actually the board representative for the Waihola Mosgiel Cycle Trail, which is not detailed there.
Jenny's noting those corrections. I'll just give her a minute. Excellent. Right, Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. It's got me as down as Mosgiel Business Association, but I'm not sure whether that association's actually still running. So I'm not a member, because I would be happy to be a member, but I don't think that's going. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Yes, you've got me down as the flood mitigation working group, and no one's ever discovered what it is or where it is, so it might as well be taken off that, I think. None of them tell me where it is or what it is, so.
That probably refers way back to when it first got started with Duke Road and those sort of things.
One more business, as well as the Public Art Gallery Acquisitions Committee. I'm also a councillor on the Dunedin Public Art Gallery Arts Society.
Right, that's good to get those tidied up and all done. Well, can we confirm the amendments of the elected members' interest registers? We confirm and amend the proposed management plan for the elected members' interests. Seconder, please. Thank you, Philippa. Any discussion? All those in favour? That's carried, thank you. Confirmation of the minutes. This is on page 11. I'll move that the board confirms the minutes of the Mosgiel-Taieri Community Board meeting held on 15th of September 2021 as the correct record.
There's a typo here. Board updates, solid stream targets. Planning is John Printing.
Oh,
Typo.
good spotting, thank you. It's a typo error to be fixed.
Yeah, but
Mr. Miller?
there's 2 or 3 issues I have with the minutes that are not there. There's no record in the minutes of the motion that was moved relating to the Friends of the Gardens. And there's also no record in the minutes, as is required in standing orders, of the revocation or the alteration to that resolution. And this is a requirement under standing orders 23.5. That 75% of members present and voting must agree to the revocation and alteration, and that vote must be recorded in the minutes. And then there's also no record of the minutes for the reasons of why the Friends of the Gardens was revoked. I believe that should be also in the minutes. And also Councillor Hoonahan's resolution, it was done on a vote was recorded. Well, that's not, the vote's not recorded in the minutes. And also the fact that I wasn't able to vote. I was out in the technicality of the transmission and I was unable to vote, and when I got brought back in I was still wasn't able to vote, and yet when we had to vote on the gardens, Dean Miller wasn't available, and when we brought back in, we went back to it again. We went back and won the vote, so we have a vote. So I think that should be recorded as well. But on one issue, Dean was brought back in and allowed to vote. On another issue, when I got brought back in, I wasn't allowed to vote, and therefore my vote wasn't recorded. That should be in the minutes, I believe. So I'll move those corrections in the minutes.
Thank you, Brian. I think we might take a short adjournment here so that Claire can check on the various issues that you've raised. So just to let our technical people know, we'll take a short adjournment. I'll move that. Can I have a second, please? Thank you. And that's at 5:08. Thank you, everybody. We've had some discussion, and our head of civic, Ms. Sullivan, will give us her input onto that.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the motion was not, following various discussion, was not a valid motion for a number of technical reasons, and so there is no requirement in the standing orders to record that in the meeting. And the other issue in terms of the spelling, the state will correct that. Will correct that.
Thank you. But given the case, can we?
Comment on it. It definitely says in our standing orders that if your revocation or alteration to a resolution, which is validating it, the requirement under standing orders 23.5 that 75% of members present and voting must agree to that, and the vote must be recorded in the minutes. Now, there's no vote recorded in the minutes.
My understanding is we didn't use that process.
Right, well, therefore, would it be out of order, because that is standing orders. We've got to follow our standing orders. And I will add to that, that under standing orders 27.2, matters recorded in minutes, the minutes must record a list of items considered, the resolutions and amendments related to these items, including those that were lost.
Ms. Sullivan.
So, the point of as you just pointed out, there was never 75%, so how can it be revoked if it was never done as per the proper process?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was the way it was done, there was a technical error with the recording of it, and so it wasn't a valid decision that was made, which is why then the new motion was put by Councillor Hurlingham and passed. So it's not a valid decision, so therefore it does not go in the minutes.
With that clarification, can we please?
And also in the minutes, it's recorded, Councillor Hurlingham's motion is recorded under the community engagement, where in fact it was done under the Friends of Gardens, when I was speaking, that's where it was done. It wasn't done under community engagement.
So there's a correction.
Oh, my apologies. I'll make that correction. Move that where it is.
Yeah, so that correction will be made. Thank you, Brian. With those corrections noted, and Ms. Sullivan undertaking to correct those minutes.
Just a clarification through you to Claire, please. Did I hear correctly, Claire, that the vote was invalid because Dean wasn't present, but in actual fact, the vote was 4-2 at that stage anyway. So even if Dean was there to vote, it would have been 4-3 or 5-2 or whatever. So surely that vote must have been taken and passed.
There were issues at the time when the vote was taken, and there was some confusion. As a result of that, it was not recorded as a valid vote, and it was not, the motion behind it was not a valid motion anyway, because staff could not implement that because the board was directing staff to do something which is not something that the board can move a resolution on. So that it is not a valid decision. It was not recorded in the minutes as such.
Right, I think we've had enough discussion on this now. So thank you for your explanations, Ms. Sullivan. We will, with those corrections noted, we will confirm the minutes of the Mosgiel-Taieri Community Board meeting held on 15th of September 2021. All those in favour? Oh, and seconded, please. Thank you, Dean. All those in favour? Carried. Pardon?
I'm voting against.
Would you like that noted? So we note that this is not a vote against.
Yeah, I'd be voting against that too, thanks.
Thank you, and Mr. Pete voting against. We move on to Part A reports. Item 6. A completion form has been received from Mr. Peake regarding the Silverstream planting project. I would note that the project's completion form regarding the Silverstream beautification project has been received. Have I got seconded for that?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. McElwee. Is there any discussion? All those in favour, oh, sorry.
I'd just like to just highlight a few things, please, if I could.
Just a second, I think I'll just take Martin's call first. He just edged you out there.
I just want clarification from you, Brian. The cost of the plants at 7,200, is that for all the plants from Mosgiel-Taieri to Gordon Road?
Yes, it should be. We ordered the plants on the basis that there would be 12 to 15,000 plants required in terms of the design plan that was done by the outside consultant for the DCC. However, with our test plantings that we've done, we can establish now that we probably only need about 5,000 plants. And that is about what we've actually ordered, which is thankful from our point of view because we've got the funds to cover it. But in actual fact, the design plan that was done by the outside consultant for the DCC was way overstated.
Just one other point. So what is the correctional facility grow?
Say that again, sorry?
What is the correctional facility grow?
No, I can't quite hear you, sorry. Corrections facility?
Yeah, what are they growing? The seeds?
No, I can't quite hear you, Martin. So,
He's just asking, what is the corrections facility? What are they actually growing?
oh, well, as you probably saw in the full report that I sent through, which hasn't been produced, is the corrections facility at Milton, which is the prison, have entered into an agreement with us for them to sow and manage the plants up to 10,000 plants per year at no cost to the project. And I've also sent photographs through to you guys over the past couple of months of their nursery down at the prison, and they are managing the whole process there for us, and they will have plants coming on stream for us over the next 12 months to 3 years that we can utilise those plants that we provide the seeds for them, but they will grow the plants, the seeds from seeds into the planting stage for us.
Can I just ask a question of Mr. McLean? How does this all fit with what the original proposal was?
Through the chair, so we DCC Parks agreed to the project and contributed by way of preparing a landscape plan, as Mr. Peake's alluded to. That plan was predicated on getting a normal revegetation type plan, and one that results in the least amount of maintenance required, and as the agreement with the community group is that the volunteers will be the ones maintaining the plants. The closer density and spacing leads to less weed growth and far less maintenance, and ultimately ends up with better canopy cover. It's also formed the basis of the bylaw approval, so which we now need to go back and discuss the application plan with the regional council. So we'll have those discussions with it's somewhat outside the scope of what was originally agreed. Certainly for the volunteers doing the planting, it will create a lot more work for that group, and I understand already there's some maintenance issues that maybe the group are not able to keep on top of. So, but that's for the group to manage. But yeah.
Just in response to that, some of those comments, the design plan suggested that we plant 0.5 to 0.75 of a metre apart. That is exactly what we have done. And therefore, the design plan is suggesting that in some of the stages that we've already done, that we should be able to plant about 91 carrot plants in one little area. And because we did it exactly in terms of the design plan, the maximum we could plant was 30 plants in that area. Therefore, we can work out very quickly that the design plan overstated the amount of plants required for the project. But just adding to the huge contribution from the correction services and a number of other, as you've seen from the paper I sent through, volunteer organisations, and to date it's about $100,000 that has been contributed in kind to the project so far. And over the next 3 years, there'll be probably about $400,000 of contributions from various sources at no cost to the project whatsoever. Thank you.
Right, we'll ask if there are any further questions. Any other speakers?
Yeah.
Mr. Miller?
I'd just like to make a vote of thanks to Brian Peake for what he's done.
Do we have a seconder? Sorry, one moment.
You've got the resolution to note, so you could add a B, then vote to pass to complete, etc. Or you deal with the note and then take us to note.
Well, I think we will deal with this and then take a second resolution. Right?
Just a point on the resolution. The project completion is not completed.
No.
So you can't have that as a resolution. You're noting the project
Noting the project.
today.
Right.
Because it's not completed.
Okay. So we're noting that the project that's not completed, that we're receiving this project progress report. Yeah.
Correct.
Project update or project report. So we changed that wording. Do we need to redo that? Okay. So with that correction, we're noting that the project progress report from Mr. Peake regarding the Silver Stream beautification. Okay. We've already had a mover and a seconder on that. Is there any further discussion on it? Yes.
Why are we filling out a project completion sheet if it's not completed?
So that was possibly my misunderstanding. I thought because the funds were expended, we need to have a project completion form for the funds for our auditing. So that's why it's completed, the funds are expended, doesn't mean the project's completed.
Everyone happy with that? Now, do we take part B and add to your amendment, Mr. Miller? Oh, okay. I'm getting to we'll take this as B then. We've done A, we'll take B. Oh, we're moving it separately. Okay, so we need to vote on part A. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. We move on to part B, which is, Ms. Miller, do you want to state that again?
Yeah, just to thank Mr. Peake for the effort that he's put into this project.
Excuse me, Mr. Sorry to be a pain. Can you make sure you use your microphone because we're being advised that they're having trouble to hear people. Thanks.
Yeah, just move that the vote of thanks, yeah, for Brian Peake for the work on the project.
Do I have a seconder for that, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Don. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 7, the meeting schedule, which you'll find on page 21 of your papers, I believe. This is the scheduled meetings for 2022 for consideration. And you'll see there that the first one, this is running, the council have set their meeting date, so this is kind of in conjunction with where they're heading. You'll see the first one's Wednesday, February the 9th, and staff have left the timing at 5 o'clock as per previous practice, but this is for your consideration. So, are there any comments? All right, then, if everyone's happy, I will move that we approve the meeting schedule for 2022.
Oh, sorry. You get it.
Mike,
I thought you were going to get, no, yeah. Thought you were going to get down one at a time. That inaugural one, just to note, it's the day of the Melbourne Cup, and I don't think people want to wearing that on the day of the
It's a
Melbourne Cup.
Wednesday, Melbourne Cup's on Tuesday.
Yeah, first Tuesday of November.
we meet Wednesdays.
You know,
We meet Wednesdays.
we can have it any other day.
Order.
Just noting to you that it's Melbourne Cup day. You go, why not go to Wednesday like every other Wednesday?
I think there might have been a mistake there. There's no mistake, it's definitely Tuesday.
Traditionally, when we have, traditionally when we have the inaugural meetings of community boards, we have 3 on one day and 3 on the other. So we will have, unless we change, it's 3 for the Tuesday. Or the other alternative is could we start Mosgiel, whichever, starting slightly earlier in the day?
Yeah, we'll look at it. We've got time between now and then, and we'll have it to see how the other program for the other inaugural meetings go for the other 2 boards, and we'll work out a time, because I would imagine that the other boards may also want to recognise that as well. So we'll take that and we'll sort that out for next week.
Good spot in there. Okay, so they'll take that under advisement. With that noted, are we happy then to approve the meeting schedule for 2022? Seconder, thank you, Councillor Hurley. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Against? That's agreed. Now we come to the community plan, which on page 23, and I noticed we've got 1 or 2 things that just need correcting. Just the first one I noted, it's just a typo. It's regarding the public forum. It's on page 27 on one clear working day. We've just got one clear day, so it's just a typo there. I did on page 33. Is that correct in the when ongoing COVID-19 has impacted progress in the planting project? Is that correct, Mr. Pete? Are you happy with that?
Whereabouts is this again?
Page 33, Silver Stream Beautification Project, under proposed community board proposed activities.
Yeah. What did you want to?
Okay.
Yeah, it's ongoing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So page 34, I think something we might consider instead of, because we haven't looked at our community plan since, I guess, 5 years or more. And I wonder if it would just be simpler to just rename that members of the community are invited to make a comment on the board's community engagement. And just leave it as engagement, and then the next line it says, have you say on the board's community engagement, and then you've got the whole gambit of how we're engaging with the public. Members happy if we change those words? Okay, thank you. Did anyone else have any things to, Mr. Don?
Yeah, it's just needs to be updated to page 28. Population stats, there's no number there.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'll put this down the bottom.
Thank you. I did look at the stats to see if they had the latest stats, but they haven't. And so once we get those sent through, then I'll update that. But there has been some delay with some of the stats from the Statistics Department. And so once we've got an update on that, we can put that in.
Yes, I think I've just got the small number, you know, the 19,000 is down the bottom, and it'd be good to get that in up the top. Is there anything else?
Yeah, just on
under the infrastructure Taieri flood mitigation. I think we need something in there for outram, because we've talked about outram enough times about stormwater and things, haven't we? And I think it needs to be in there. And also, I'd like to see in there that the long-term plan, taking Mosgiel's urban stormwater out of the storm stream. I'd like to see that. I don't think there's any other area in New Zealand where they plump the horrible stormwater into local rivers. Well, there's a few, but we need to look after our environment.
Well, with regards to that last comment, I think that's been raised several times when Three Waters staff have been here, and I think each time we've raised, or it's been raised, my understanding is that they have said that we've got a consent or agreement with ORC regarding that. So I don't think that's an area that we can, perhaps it's something that we could submit on in a different way.
I brought that up at the regional council the other day when I was there, and the girls were absolutely amazed, didn't know about it. They were quite disgusted on it when I spoke to them. But yeah, but I think even whether it's an ORC thing or not, I think it should be future should be looked at that stormwater should come out of our rivers and go through the processes, regardless of whether they got consent or not.
Thanks, Brian. Can you just remind me what your first point was? What page were you on?
32, it comes
32.
comes under infrastructure Taieri flood mitigation.
Yeah, and it was outram, wasn't it?
Yeah, out here.
Yeah.
It's been talked about the outram sewage systems and stormwater and that for years, but nothing ever gets done.
I think Ms. Sullivan might be able to update us.
Yep, so the place for that would be the new priorities, because on page 30, so we can add that 30, 31. 32 is for the priorities that have been included from your community plan that have been included in the 10-year plan when the council's made that decision. So Mr. Miller's first point should go in the new priorities for our community. That's because it's not yet in the 10-year plan.
Yep.
Councillor Hoonan.
Yes, I fully support what Brian Miller's saying around that. There's over the next 10 years and even 20 years, there's going to be major issues with infrastructure around Mosgiel. Part of that is tied up with the wastewater and the civil stream, and it's going to cross over with ORC's freshwater plan, and so there's quite a few issues. So I think that would be great as a board and for the community if we had that as a priority to look to bring that up as often as possible to try to clear those waterways, because I agree in this day and age it is disgusting that you know, we're polluting the waterways like that, and not necessarily me. It's obviously not just us, but the water should be clean enough that you can swim in it, because a lot of people use those areas. The Silver Stream is a picnic area that we've talked about a lot here, and I think it's a very valid point that you've raised. Thank you for that, Brian.
Thank you.
It's rather ironic that we're spending millions of dollars for the council right at the moment to pump more in it.
Well, thank you for the points that have been made, and we will wrestle with those and try and we'll take advice and then rework the plan. As we comment every meeting, this is a living document, and it's good to see us responding to feedback and to community concerns. So let's keep addressing this each meeting as we discuss the community plan. Yes, Mr. Pink, you've got something?
Yeah, just a couple of things. My phone number in New Zealand is defunct. It's gone in the meantime. So temporarily, my phone number in Australia is +61 493 082 115 until such time that we get back. The other thing, are we discussing parts of the community plan now or not?
I think that would be more a workshop thing rather than we're just trying to tidy up what's here, but we can have a workshop in future if you want to do a real revamp of it.
Yep.
Is there any other comments? Councillor Hoonan.
Well, I don't know, it may not be appropriate to bring this up now, but since we're talking about the community, in our community in Mosgiel, we have a lot of elderly people, and as Joy and I know we were at Brooklands Village today talking to some of the residents there, and some of the things they raised that I thought perhaps we could put some of those into this plan, you know, around issues with accessibility to the book bus was something that a lot of them were really keen on, is to have the book bus drop off at the retirement village and go to the other villages as well, I would imagine. But it's certainly for people who have limited mobility, it would be certainly a service that they were keen to have.
Yeah, I think we do have a section in there on transport and on pedestrian safety, so there is an opportunity, but I guess we don't want to detail every last little service that we would have in there, but it would come in under that general section, councillor, so I think it's covered.
And another thing too, for in the future, for our community plan, certainly traffic is going to be a major issue from Mosgiel into town particularly. And something that we talk a lot about at council is park and ride, and looking at that. So we've mentioned a bit about here, but as a community board, we could perhaps I've indicated here if we advocate for the park and ride, and certainly then get feedback to see if the community supports that.
I support what Councillor Hurley had saying, but it would be good if our community was actually consulted on this. We're getting this coming from council that we need to park and ride. I want to see what the community want rather than what the council wants. That's my point.
Well, I think that's a good point, and I hear what you're saying to councillor regarding the new moves to increase transport by bus and cut down the cars coming across the hill. So yes, I think it's a good idea if we have a look at that in more detail, and perhaps we should look at having a workshop early in the new year and consulting our public, see what they think. But let's work on, we'll play around with it, send it out and about, and I think it's something we'll hold over to the new year.
Sorry, can I just make a clarification? I mean, I'm happy for people to be able to have their car to go in. That's not the point I was trying to make, but just I was trying to highlight that obviously traffic is going to be an issue for Mosgiel.
Ms. Sullivan's got some advice.
The park and ride issue was one of the 6 transport strategies that have been nominally signed off in the 10-year plan. So each one of them will go through a separate process. So that's one of those, and there will be a process. We can check in with the Mr. Drew to see what measure of consultation it will be, but it is the start of that process. So I'm sure that there will be some consultation as part of that.
I was about to say that too. In all of these plans, there is public consultation. It's possibly our role to make sure that our community knows when, where and how they can contribute to that. It might not necessarily that we have to have a public meeting, but we can direct them to the appropriate department and help them with their submissions. Councillor Hoogan.
Oh, sorry. And just thank you for raising that, Sullivan, is that it makes sense to try to tie in those areas. In our plan, I thought, you know, because the council, you're correct, has got that in the plan. So if we're putting out a plan, if it's in line with the council's goals as well, it makes sense. Thank you.
Right, have we covered the ground there? I think we had a pretty good go at it. Okay, we will just leave that document plugging away and we'll keep looking at it, and I'll work with Jenny with the suggestions that we made this evening. So we move on to, we have to approve it. Are you happy with where we've got to tonight, given that it's a living document and we're still working on it? So I'll move that we approve the plan as it's been presented with the corrections. Seconded, Mr. McElwee. Any further discussion? Right, we'll carry on. So we're up to item 9, Government Support Officers Report. Are you happy to take that as read?
Madam Chair, just a couple of, just one thing to mention. The submissions on the keeping of animals bylaw excluding dogs closes on the 17th of November. So the board just needs to decide if it wishes to make a submission just to work out how we do that. If you do that after this evening, it could be ratified at a later board meeting. Happy to answer other questions.
I comment on
Ms. Collett?
that. Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment on that. I'd like to see that the board request the exclusion of the rural and rural residential zones from the DCC district plan, from the keeping of animals and birds from the bylaw review. In other words, I want the rural and rural residential areas excluded from the review. Thank you.
Are you moving that?
Yes.
Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Seconded, Mr. Page?
Yep.
Do you want to speak to that, Mr. Rimmer? Yep.
Yeah, I mean, roosters and things, I mean, if you start telling farmers and that they can't have roosters and farm noises, I mean, it's getting a bit over the top. And that's why I'm saying rural noises are kept in the rural. I go along with the rooster noise in the towns, fair enough, but keep it in an urban area and not keep it out, you know, that's where I come from. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers?
I have to abstain from this because I have council have to vote on it.
Yeah. So you're sitting back on this one. Thank you. Any other comments? Well, that seems to me, if you'd like to make that the submission,
I think the board,
you can propose it as our submission.
yeah, I propose that to be part of their submission.
Is there a seconder for that? Oh, we had one. We've done it. So everyone's happy with that? That's no further discussion? Then we will carry that and that will go. Does anyone want to go and speak to the submission? Or we just send it in?
Well, really good. I mean, I just think it's common sense. I mean, because we're a board that's split into rural and urban, and we're not taking the urban out, but we're letting rural people do their thing. That's why they're rural. Thank you.
Okay, then, well, I'll work with Jenny and we'll get that written up and submitted on behalf of the board. Right, back to the report. Are there any questions from Ms. Sullivan?
Yeah, just a question about the pocket parks. Are we going to get consulted on what's going to go in?
I can ask Mr. Christos and we'll get back to you about that.
Because the initial design of it didn't work because the seats are too low. And that was a point made by a lot of elderly people. That's when I had to fix the FAMR. So that needs to be done. But I think initially that pocket parks were consulted with the board and the street painting. And that was all put through the board. Now this is going to be a change. And I think the board should be able to have a look at that before it's approved.
As I said, I'll put that suggestion to Mr. Christos and get back to you about that.
Second that.
Right, that's Ms. Sullivan's noted that. Thank you. Any other discussion?
Project fund, have you had any word from Party and Parks? What's the communication? Have you spoken to them?
No, we heard nothing from them. I did speak to them way back, did you remember? Okay.
To the landfill?
Yes, the submission is going in. Yes, it's been
Can
done.
I make a comment on that?
Is that appropriate?
It's just I think it's
Oh, yes, you can.
there's a wording here, just like when you go down to the bottom, it says ensure trucks are appropriately covered to avoid contamination from rubbish being spilled during transportation from transfer stations to the rubbish disposal. I'd like to see it change that during transportation and add to and from the rubbish disposal, because they are going to cart leachate back out of that area by truck. So I think to and from the area rather than just to.
That sounds reasonable. Other people here have got any comments? That sounds reasonable, and we can adjust that. It hasn't, it's got a, we thought we just needed to send it in the complete form, so I've signed and we'll just adjust the wording on the form. That'll be great. All right.
Can I just,
Mr. Pete?
yeah, can I just ask the question, whether it's the appropriate area, just let me know, but with regards to the project fund, I noticed in the grants through the City Council, a Greater Taieri Community Network Group was allocated $62,000 from the DCC Grants Fund. Do we know anything about this group? Because I've asked some questions and no one seems to know. I know that South Dunedin have got a similar group, Green Island have got a similar group, and they've got websites, contact people and all sorts of information about them, but there is nothing about the Greater Taieri Community Network Group, and yet they've been funded $62,000, but I don't see them being registered as a charitable organisation, a trust, or whatever. Does anyone know?
I can give you an update on that. The reason they don't have a website or a Facebook page or any of that yet is because they've only just been formed. They've applied to the council for the funding and have met all the criteria. There are in fact 10 place-based groups in the city, and the grants committee meeting is online. You can go in and have a look at that if you'd like to. My understanding is they have a logo, they are days away from being registered with the charities, not Charities Commission, but the first part, which is MB, and they will be shortly moving to getting a bank account set up. My understanding also is that the members of that group want to come and speak to the board and give them the background, but prefer to do it in person, so haven't so far attended.
So they were granted $62,000, yet the group is not formed properly yet, is that correct?
The group is formed according to the rules as set down by the DCC Grants Committee. They've met all the criteria, and that is why they've been granted the funds. Further discussion on that actually needs to go to the community development team or to the group themselves. I suggest you talk to the group themselves.
Can't find them.
Well, when they...
No, there is no contact details at all for that group.
There will be, I'm sure.
And yet they got granted $62,000 and they're not available.
Brian, we're not here to debate the processes of the Dunedin City Council Grants Committee. They have very strict protocols. They have people on there. The Deputy Mayor chairs it. I can't imagine the Dunedin City Council is handing out money to groups that don't meet the criteria. So we'll close that discussion now. Is there any other comments on the topic?
Celebration of excellence, was the council taken over?
No, it's not that I'm aware of.
Or just Parks and Recreation Department advised that they will meet the installation cost. Final details are still to be determined. So they taken it out of the board's hands.
My understanding is that there are some discussions. Perhaps we'll go across to Mr. McLean for that one.
Thanks, Chair. So DCC Parks have agreed to meet the installation costs as a contribution towards it.
There's been a wee bit of confusion where it's actually going. Could you clarify exactly where it's going, please?
Well, my understanding is it's going on those walls as you walk through to the park, past the Senior Citizens Hall, on the back walls.
The driveway.
It's not a driveway there, it's a curved area with seating.
Yeah. Where the confusion is right with me is that it was moved, actually you moved it, that it was to go in an alcove behind the library. And I understood it was going, it's in the minutes of our April meeting that it was to be in an alcove behind the library.
Well, my term may not have been correct, but I was referring to the area behind the library, to the side of the library. So all of this is still under discussion with Parks, and my understanding is there will be a full report to the board in February. Any other questions? Right. That being the case, then we will note the Government Support Officer's report, ratify the submission of the Dunedin City Council Smooth Hill landfill resource consent, and we've already made the decision to make a submission on the keeping of animals.
And just noting that we'll record that Councillor Hoover had took no part in items B and C.
Yes, thank you. That being the case, all those in favour? Oh, I need a seconder. Philip Bain. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Item number 10, board updates. I'll get each person to speak and then we can have any question afterwards. Philip, have you got an update from KDB?
Nothing further to add from my email last week.
Thank you. Friends of the Memorial Gardens, Mr. Miller.
Yes, done a bit of research since our last meeting.
Right.
Oh. And it appears that the Memorial Gardens actually come under the Reserve Act 1997, and the DCC given responsibility to manage it. So the DCC put out a document called the Reserve Management Plan, and this is the general policies. And just to let you know what's on it, it's comments. Development of the reserves, including the policies that guide the management of reserves, may have significant effects on users and adjoining property owners. Considering this, it is appropriate for user groups, reserve owners, and the general public to be consulted so that issues of concern can be identified and acceptable solutions agreed upon. The development of reserves and their future management also requires input from users and non-users of reserves to take account of the demand and potential demand for reserves. Strategic planning for reserves, in this sense, needs to include community consultation to ensure the resource is managed in a sustainable level in light of its functions and purpose under the Reserves Act 1997. Objectives: to ensure that the outcomes of the community consultation process reflects the functions and purpose of the reserve. Policies: any major development of a reserve involves consulting the community as an affected party. And 3, that the outcomes used from the community consultation process reflect the functions and purpose of the reserve. So I declare that you made the consultation resolution invalid, and it is set in stone in law and legislation of this country under the Reserves Act 1997 that you must consult. And you've told me that you've actually withdrew my resolution for consulting.
Well, thank you, Brian. That was very informative. Just to clarify, we aren't breaking the law. What we were withdrawing was the fact that this board, in a governance role, cannot direct staff to undertake operational matters. I haven't finished, Mr. Miller. Therefore, you're quite right regarding the consultation and the Reserve Management Act. In fact, I believe Mr. Brinkley spoke to us quite some time ago and pointed out to us that this was going to happen and that there would be full consultation. So it won't just be the Friends of the Gardens, it'll be anybody in the area that uses the area. So I think what we'll do is ask Mr. McLean to outline his
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think the keywords that you used there, Mr. Miller, any major development requires consultation, and we wouldn't always do that. What we wouldn't do is consult people to say we're going to mow the lawns on a Wednesday. What do you think? I think it's for obvious reasons. We've upgraded the playground, and we sought input from the community. That's the last probably major upgrade of that reserve. We are reviewing all of our reserve management plans. We're working on the reserve general policies at the moment. Everyone will they cover the broader policies of reserve management. Everyone will have input into that. And we will be developing a specific Mosgiel Memorial Park management plan in the near future, which everyone will have input into. So it is we'll seek views from the wide community. There are a number of groups with a keen interest in Mosgiel Memorial Gardens. The Friends of the Gardens are just one of those groups.
The words in the development of the reserves and their future management, and that is like the celebration of excellence. Now, let me take you a step further on the celebration of excellence. It's something that's going to be held every year, because that's what's all in the documentation. We could end up with 100 or more of these plaques. Now, that's a development in the gardens, and I believe that council is obliged under the Reserves Management Act, before they even do anything, to consult, and that's exactly the same with the East-Taieri Cemetery, where this wall was to go up. There's been no public consultation on that and the development of that reserve as well. And my whole point is consultation, and my resolution for consultation, which was only supporting the bloody law of the country, was thrown out as being valid, because, to quote our governance officer, she said words to the effect that a motion to consult is not a valid motion, and yet it's in the law, the 1977 Reserves Management Act, that you have to consult. So to throw out a resolution on someone's advice that a motion to consult is not a valid motion. I'll tell you what, you're stretching it there.
Well, thank you for your input, Ryan. Are there any other speakers? That being the case.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Pate.
Yeah, I would just like to add to that. I'm just disappointed that we're drawing straws and saying whether it's a major development or a minor development. For goodness sake, we really have to consult with the community, for goodness sake. Now I go back to the East-Taieri Cemetery, where Margaret Van Ziel's proposal for the wall was that necessary to be consulted with the community. Yes, of course it must be, for goodness sake. We're talking about the community of which we represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any further speakers? Right.
But anyway, carry on. I got some pieces of that. As far as I know, the Friends of Gardens, they're having a meeting or two, and hopefully they'll be on their website, and people can come along, and very welcome to come along, I think. So just keep an eye out and come along. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Sorry, I cut you off there. You haven't finished your report. Where are we up to? Alton Hill, Mr. McElwain. Oh, hang on about it. Councillor Hurley.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think Scott McLean put it very, very well and explained at our last meeting as well, that, and I think by law, council have to consult on, you know, when it's any sort of
Point of order, Madam Chair. That discussion had ceased.
I have to rule in favour. Thank you, Councillor. I had called Mr. McElwain.
Thanks, Joy. Obviously, the Hawken Hill was postponed again due to COVID, and we will be making contact with Lee from Waste Minimisation to see if we'll proceed in the early new year, possibly February, March, but that's a discussion that will be taking place shortly.
Oh, you're up again, Mosgiel Coronation Hall.
Thanks, Joy. We had a meeting this Monday. Unfortunately, a few of the current members of that group are nearing their mature years, and we're looking for some new trustees, which is proving to be quite a hard task. So if anyone knows of anyone that's looking to put some time into the community, Coronation Hall Trust is certainly looking for a couple. Robert Cochran, who's obviously done a long standing there, is 26 years, I think he's been involved. He just needs to look for a replacement, as to a few. So just keep that in mind. As far as rentals, just been very slow over the COVID area, but starting to increase now, and looking forward to a good year next year, hopefully.
I make a suggestion that approaching service costs, because they are natural people for doing service in the community. They may pop up. And I have to say, you are very busy, because I'm right beside the wall now.
Thanks, Mark. Just on that, I'll clarify your light issue is in maintenance issues. It's been noted, and it's on the list.
Don't worry.
Thank you. We are now up to the Mosgiel Aquatic Project team. Mr. Miller.
Yes, I missed the last meeting. As our friend, Mr. McLean pointed out, the emails I've got, but he seems to miss one email. From what I can gather, from what I hear is that there could be, there may be quite a blowout in the budget.
Just possible take a thing off it.
And also it appears that the date for opening could be in doubt, because I don't believe there's too much of the actual pool in the country. I think a lot of it's offshore, and what we've got with shipping and all the rest, who knows. But I was unable to get to the Trust's annual meeting, but I think Dean got there, and maybe Dean would like to comment on that annual meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. No, I popped along. I think the Trust was just slightly disappointed that the consent process obviously hadn't happened. I think it was brought up whether, you're right, though, I guess the budget will blow out. It's going to happen with COVID, freight, and I believe, I don't know, Scott will know more, but I do believe the hardware for the pool is coming from Europe, and we all know what that's like at the moment. So yeah, I think you're right with the delayed opening. Scott, why not to comment further on that?
Through the chair, yes, so we're looking at a mid-2023, so that is a little bit later. In terms of equipment coming from offshore, our contractors actually ordered a lot of the equipment early, so a lot of it's secure, so it's as good as we can do at the moment, pending with what's happening around the world, but we're in a pretty good space, as I understand it. So yeah, it's still on track, and I'm not aware of any budget blowouts.
Any further comments? Have you finished, Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, question?
What's happening with the swim school in Mosgiel? There'll be 2 seasons now without, there will all be 2 seasons.
It's a question through me to Mr. McLean. Yeah, okay, I'll ask Mr. Scott if you've got a response there.
I'll give the detail. There are swimming lessons being conducted in town, and I believe at other parts of other community pools and school pools around Mosgiel. Obviously with level 2 restrictions, but all the swimming lessons around the place are restricted currently anyway, in terms of numbers, but I'll get the detail of what's happening. But obviously that with the community pool being closed, there's no swimming lessons occurring there.
The reason why I asked was the cost to the schools for transporting the kids to these so-called other pools, because we don't have any pools, but one in Argyle Street, which is too small. The Victoria College is full most of the time. So I just want to know the cost to that community of this taking so long to get underway.
Through Joe, I don't have the costs. I know schools transport, schools in town transport their children to Moana for lessons. So costs of transporting school children for any of their outside of the classroom activities falls to the schools. So yeah, you'll have to probably seek the costs of those schools.
Any other comments? Oh, Mr. Pete, sorry.
Yeah, just a question through the chair to whoever. I see on various social media that the community is not too impressed about the delay of the opening or the proposed opening in 2023. And people are saying that they're going to miss 2 seasons of swimming, and that originally it was supposed to be 2022. And people are saying, why couldn't the old pool still remain open until such time that things started with the construction, because it hasn't really started yet? Thanks.
Through the chair, yeah, we looked at that well and truly before the project started. It's not possible for health and safety reasons. We need to occupy the entire site. There's a lot of machinery moving back and forward, and it just wasn't a safe option. So that's why the pool was closed. In terms of being closed for 2 seasons, I'll remind the board that this will be, when the facility is finished, it'll be a year-round pool. So very quickly you'll make up for any lost ground. So it's going to be open all year round.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. So I think it's me next. Mosgiel-Taieri Emergency Group. So we had our last meeting. A small group have gone over the flood maps and updated them and sent them to John Luke Payman at the ORC, who is going to produce updated maps to have on site for the team. They'll be meeting again next in a couple of weeks for their final get-together for the year, to look at those maps and just tidy up any other catch-ups for the year. There is a new Civil Defence Emergency Manager Officer being appointed to replace Paul Allen, but it's his second day, the day of our get-together, so I don't think we're going to see him yet, but we will have a designated person back, which we haven't had for a while. So there's a good core group of quite dedicated people who I greatly appreciate meeting about every 2 months now. And that's us. What's happening in the Outram Emergency Group?
No, nothing. Sure, you've pretty much touched with Paul removing himself from that organisation. We're just in limbo.
Silverstream Plantons, Brian Pete. We can't hear you, Brian.
Righto, we're on. Yeah, there's nothing really much to add. What I'd really like, though, is something noted of the contributors that have contributed so far. And you've got those details of who has been involved, because I made commitments to those groups that we would publicly acknowledge their efforts. And their efforts are huge. They really are huge. And so I'd like those organisations to be named. And of course, DCC are one part of those as well. if that could be possible, please.
We'll look into that for you, Brian.
Thank you.
Any comments? Right. Social media, it's you again, Brian.
Yeah, no, nothing really. That's still chugging along quite nicely. I still wanted some information from various board members with regards to their activities, to put it on the Facebook to see what, so that the public could see what we're actually doing with regards to activities. Had some information there, but it wasn't, she didn't really want too much of it put forward. So I just asked everyone if they would like to put their information through to me.
Thank you, we've noted that. Community engagement, has anyone got anything extra they'd like to share about anything? I'll mention our trip to Brooklands later.
Just on that, Joy, the community of Outram had a small meeting at the Outram Hotel on Sunday to decide or help guide the owner with the future of the hotel. Things have been pretty hard on the hospitality industry in small towns, so he's working through hopefully some processes that we can keep the hotel and it will remain viable for him or a potential lessee. So we all know that it's a pretty integral part of a small town, so we'd like to think get a positive outcome out of that just moving forward.
Thanks, team. It's unfortunate to hear that. It's sadly part of a lot of stories we hear from time to time, isn't it? Anyone else? I just point out, I really appreciate when people note that there's something on in the area, like the AGM for the pool group, or something that you think it would be helpful for a board member to go along and just be a representative and just be a listening ear, not necessarily to even to contribute, but to be present and be able to just get the feel for what's going on out there. So thank you to those that find the time to do that. I really appreciate it. So we'll note the board's updates.
Just,
oh, yes, Brian?
I just ask again, probably the third or fourth time, Waihola Mosgiel Cycle Trail is not listed on the board activities. Would someone please put it on so I can actually report to it, please? And I'll give you an update.
Ms. Sullivan said she'll put it on for the next one.
Thank you. Okay, very quickly. As you know, the funds from the NZTA Cycle Network weren't available after the 30th of June of $200,000, which is quite sad. I had a report from Stacey Hitchcock today telling me that Fulton Hogan have been installing the signage from Waihola through to Mosgiel, and there's 5 intersections that she still has to get Fulton Hogan to install the signage. But essentially, the signage for that trail, even though it's not the preferred trail along the Silver Stream, there will be a trail from Waihola to Mosgiel as such. NZTA Cycle Network has funds available this year, and which will be available for at least 2 years. So we hope that we can convince ORC that the banks of the Silver Stream might be able to be utilised. And yeah, so that's just a very, very quick update, but nothing's really happened with regards to the Silver Stream access, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Have you got a question, Mr. Miller?
About the banks of Silver Stream.
Is this related to this?
Yeah, it is actually. Scott might be able to say something here. I think there's some shrubbery from the pool. They're looking for a place. Is that any good for the Silver Stream? Scott, could you?
Scott, have you got
Something to do with the shrubbery around the pool? They're looking for something to put in?
Through the chair, I think there are some cabbage trees, some mature cabbage trees that they're looking to relocate. I think you're right. And I did suggest looking an arborist out there because they may be able to be used on the Silver Stream. So yeah, I can update you further on that.
Thank you.
Would that be any good for?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. Maybrook? No?
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move those board updates. Can I have a second, please? Thank you, Philippa. All those, is there any discussion? Further discussion? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Chairperson's report. Just a couple of things to add to what's there. As Councillor Houlihan mentioned earlier, she and I went to Brooklands today to speak to their monthly gathering. There was a very large group of people there actually, and they were very engaged. So I thank Councillor Houlihan for her suggestion. It was actually a very worthwhile time with those folks. And great news today to get the report that the security cameras for Memorial Park are 90% being installed. That's correct. I think I've got an email here about it. Wiring installed, 90% complete. Cameras currently being installed, working on pole top camera installing currently. Completion is aimed for the end of November 2021. So that's fantastic. It's been something the board has been asking for many years now about security issues and looking after our young people. So we greatly appreciate that that has been completed, and thank everyone at my team. The only other thing I would say is it seems a bit ridiculous because we're only in, not even mid-November yet, but I do appreciate all the efforts that the board members put in throughout the year, and over the breaks. There won't be a break for many of the people. So I just want to acknowledge that and hope that everyone gets a well-deserved holiday and comes back refreshed and raring to go in the new year. So I'd like to move that report. Seconder, please. Thank you, Dean. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we've had business as usual. We seem to have more business, don't we? We've had numerous meetings lately, but a lot of them have been on different, we've had certainly quite a few workshops, and we've just finished economic development, community culture and finances. One of the big things with economic development was a strategy that they've been working on for the last 10 years. And I thought one of the great messages that is really good to hear is that we set a goal, or the economic development set a goal that for our city we wanted to have 10,000 more jobs. And they can now say that over that time we've achieved 10,000 more jobs in our city, which is fantastic. So that's a great thing to tick off, and we were all very pleased to hear that. We talked about the strategy, and they also mentioned that now, because that was set quite a while ago, that now they're going to review that strategy again and look at new things for the next 10 years for business development in our city. Something we talked about at the time as well that came up at one of our meetings, I think it was infrastructure, is around looking at ways to become more innovative and create more business opportunities with recycling, because there's a major problem, we're going to have in the future and now to reduce our recycling in our city, because there's only so much that the landfill can take, and there's quite a few issues around getting rid of it, because it's difficult to send anything overseas at the moment, and do we want to do that as a city? And so we're hoping that we will try and nurture businesses or startups or anyone who comes to us with, or we find or discover people who have really good ideas around how to utilise recycling and how to help reduce it, but look at creating business opportunities with that as well for the city. So that was something that came up at one of the meetings that we found really interesting. I think in our last meeting we talked about the mandating of the 3 waters. I think that was mentioned then, wasn't it? So that's one of the issues that has now been taken out of our hands, and we have no say on that. And as Joy talked about earlier, her and I went to Brooklands Village today, and as a city councillor, I think what's really rewarding about that is that we're engaging with the people, because quite often at council, you're talking, you know, we're reading council staff reports, which, don't get me wrong, are well done. But it's great to actually be engaging with the people in the community where you're representing. And so doing that today was very rewarding, as that we got quite a bit of feedback about some of the things they want and about how, you know, some things they didn't like. But in general, you know, I thought it was really beneficial. And I hope we can do a lot more of that as well. And I would put that out there to all board members that it's really a good idea to, anywhere you get an opportunity to engage with your community is very rewarding. Some of the things they talked about is certainly having a mobility, things to help people with limited mobility. And one of those things that they were really keen on to see more of was the library bus. So that used to come and visit them, it doesn't anymore, and I think there's some other parts in the city where that's affected too. So hopefully we can work with council to bring that back to the rest homes in this area, or look at some other ways to offer a service where maybe the library here, because we have a very good library in Mosgiel, that maybe they look at coming out themselves, I don't know, but we need to think, how can we make this more accessible for these people, because that's something they've asked for. And the other thing they talked about was the loop bus, and how the loop bus, this one particular bus wasn't kneeling anymore, but I've actually investigated that, and what Julian at ORC was saying is, as far as he knows, all those buses do kneel, so maybe it might have been a one-off where the bus, it was a different bus. But we've certainly, I want, if there, any of them are listening today, I want you to know we have investigated already those things you raised, and hopefully we can get some positive results for you. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. So do you want to move, we note your council update?
Yes, thank you.
Seconded, please. Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 13, items for consideration by the chair. In relation to that, I know that you know, staff are really busy and we're trying to get as much through the GSO as possible. But I'd be really keen. I've missed not hearing from our library. We used to have quarterly, I think, reports. And I wonder if we've just had a one-off, some early in the new year update from our library staff, because big shout out to the Mosgiel Library. They do an outstanding job and they're very community focused. And I think it's an opportunity for us and for the public to hear what they offer and to acknowledge them. So if that's possible, if they could fit it in. Yeah, that'd be great. Any other? Mr. Dillon.
Yeah, can I have an update on the pedestrian crossing at Brooklands?
Pedestrian crossing.
Right?
Pedestrian crossing.
Yeah. Because it's a health and safety matter.
Yeah.
There's no footpath for them to cross. So it's been brought up by the pedestrians and people to walk. And that was 3 meetings ago.
Yeah, it has been raised. I've noted that. Any others?
Yeah.
Mr. P. Yes, Brian.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, there's a number of things, and we get to the end of the meeting and we haven't discussed a number of things that were raised at our last meeting, which really disappoints me. Now, just to go through a couple of things, the Honours Board, I'd like to take that task on board to make some inquiries. I've already made some inquiries to see if we can do something about that Honours Board. So if someone would like to move that, or I can move that, that I take that task on.
No, we actually can't. We're not doing. We've finished the business part of the meeting. These are just items for consideration for the next agenda. So we could put the Honours Board on for the next agenda.
And I will.
I have to find out, because it might have already had its day, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, it hasn't happened for 10 years, so it's not likely to happen now.
Well,
so I will. I'll make some inquiries anyway. Okay. So the retaining wall that was an issue over in the new development, have we got an update on that?
We'll have a look at that.
They'll look it up, they'll look into it.
Yeah, but we were told that last meeting. Okay. The Mosgiel sign, have we got an update on that?
In what respect?
Claire was going to find out whether ECC would take on the responsibility of that sign. Okay. Can I ask Dean, through the chair, the Church Street footpath, and Dean mentioned it's been going on for about 3 or 4 years. What is the issue? Why can't something be done?
Is it Brian? It'd probably be a good 3 years. I believe in dates back to Richard Saunders' days, it was going to get added to a maintenance program, and it's just gone to Never Land.
So we actually can't get into this discussion now because we're at the end of the meeting, but it is in our community plan as a priority.
Okay. Centre Street extension. Now, I get all this information from the task tracker. Centre Street extension was raised by, I think, Brian Miller. We've never discussed it again.
Yeah.
Mr. Milty, I think we've got an answer to that, so that's fine. Anything else?
Elizabeth Avenue issues that Pip raised many months ago. Do we know where and how we've progressed with that?
We're not actually dealing with the task tracker, remember? That's not part of our agenda.
I'm not talking about the task tracker. I'm talking about issues that I want to raise.
So we'll look into Elizabeth Avenue. Well, the staff will look into it and see if it's to be considered for the next meeting. Anything else?
Okay, so can we please have some resolution to some of these issues?
I can only pass it on to staff and come back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thorpe, did you have something?
Yeah, but it's not really on the consideration. I wondered if I could ask Scott for you about the missing chair at Lindsay Avenue at the park. Do you know about that?
Through the chair, no, but I can find out.
It needs to be sawn off.
Oh, nice. Any other items for the consideration? Right. That being the case, then I will close the meeting at 6:30.